I know that a lot of you have been hearing things, and mostly good things, that have been happening with the NVHA and the Writer's House. And I'm going to go over some of those, and then I'm going to actually ask our friends here who have poetry to come up and read a few of their poems. Their best, of course. Not every one of their poems. Their best. Yeah. And we got claps on that. I like that. I just wanted to tell you what's been happening for since the Writer's House opening. How many happen to be able to go to the Writer's House on either the Saturday or the Sunday of the opening? If any of you are interested, after we're done and packed up, we'll be happy to take you for a tour back there if you want to take the ride. But you let us know at the end. There's like I would do it, you know. Anyway, just want to give you a little insight into what's happening with what you've been hearing about, the Mighty Writers. The Mighty Writers is an organization. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna give you a comparison of the mission statement of the Mighty Writers and the Nick Virgilio Haiku Association, and you'll see that they are a perfect fit for our organization. The Nick Virgilio Writers House seeks to promote education, literacy, and the creative exercise of the writing of haiku and other forms of poetry within the community. Our goal is to support the teachings of creative writing and self-expression through a series of poetry workshops, readings, and interactive poems for children and adults, and to further the legacy of Nick Virgilio, of course, and his worldwide renowned writing of changing of haiku and then writing of haiku through his lifetime. Now, the Mighty Writers mission. The Mighty Writers mission is to teach, and it used to say Philadelphia children. Now it's going to say Philadelphia and Camden children, ages 7 to 17, which is pretty much where, if any of you know about our poetry contest, the National Poetry Contest, it's approximately the same range of individual children. 7 to 17 to think. All right, I'm going to go over it again. The mission of the Mighty Writers House is to teach Philadelphia and Camden children ages 7 to 17 to think and write with clarity so they can achieve success at school, at work, and in life. To write with clarity, you have to think clearly first. When you think clearly, you make smart decisions. Make enough smart decisions, self-esteem soars, and success follows. So I think that we've got a perfect partner. In the near future, we're going to start with them with some couple of times a week in the summer, and then we're going to work on the idea and work out the idea of having them affiliate with Sacred Heart School, and basically bringing the children from Sacred Heart School and after school programs. And as it progresses, they have a lot of programs. So we're thrilled, because the reality of it, we were saying after we opened the Writers House, how are we going to keep things rolling? How are we going to, we've got 14 people on our board of directors. Everybody's busy or retired and thinks they're busy. Like me. I'm not retired. But it's something that says that Writer's House is going to be used for the purpose it was raised and then built back up again. So we're really thrilled with that. This is I invite you to, let me just put this, it's a little wet up here. I'm going to need paper towels, because in the grooves here, I don't want people to get their poetry wet. So if you bring that, or napkins, yeah, that's fine. Well,
you know what, I have paper towels, so just give me a couple.
I came here early today and I saw that there was a lot of things that needed to be done around the grounds. I actually did a kind of a stepping on all the weeds over there, so they're not tickling your legs there. And it's just been one of those days today that feels like I'm back at the diner, running with short help. Okay, so there we go. All right. This is their brochure, which is beautiful. I invite you to go on their website, www.mightywriters.org. Nick Virgilio Haiku, nickvirgiliohaiku.org is our website. So it's both pretty easy. A lot of things about the children. They have beautiful things on their website telling what they've been doing. They've been around since, what year was it? Where's
they've been around ago. I think
2008?
Yeah, I think so.
About how many?
10 years ago.
10 years ago, so 2008. And they've been doing great things. 4 locations in Philadelphia, and 4 storefront buildings in Philadelphia, and 2 recreation centers. So we've got 1 writer's house and the possibility of using a certain guy's recreation center named after him.
Yep.
Oh, can't hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
do they charge the children?
No.
No.
No, we were thrilled to hear that. You know that it is free to the children and their families.
They have strong funding streams, and they're already serving thousands of children. And this year, one of their students got into Harleigh.
Oh, fantastic. I want to read also the article that Henry cut out of the Philadelphia Inquirer. It was on June 21st. That's last Thursday. Philadelphia Mighty Writers to add first New Jersey site. Philadelphia-based Mighty Writers is about to open its first location in New Jersey. The new location will be at the Virgilio Writers House in Camden. Applause. Where's my applause for? Where's my applause sign? Yeah, okay, good. All right. Good. All right. See, I'm really messing up here. I've lost my place. All right. It will begin by holding one-day workshops during the summer, then transition to Mighty Writers traditional programs once the school year begins. The Camden Center at 1801 Broadway will also offer bilingual classes for Spanish speakers. We've had numerous requests over the years to bring our programs to Camden. Mighty Writers founder and executive director Tim Whitaker said in a statement, "We think of Camden as a blood brother to Philly, and we can't wait to meet the city's children." Mighty Writers holds free, short, and long-term writing workshops for children to teach Philadelphia kids to think and write with clarity so they can achieve success at school, at work, and in life, according to its website. Although Mighty Writers has been expanding, Whitaker says he does not plan to take the organization outside the Philadelphia area. Other locations are in North Philadelphia, Bella Vista, North Central Philadelphia, Southwest Center City, and Powelton. Workshops include educational activities that encourage students to engage with the topics they write about. The, quote, "For the Love of Cheesesteaks," unquote, camp, for instance, teaches students history and culture through blog and brochure writing, and other camps have attendees develop personal portfolios and mobile app proposals to help them prepare for life as adults. And I would translate that for the older folks that are here, but I'm one of them, so I don't really understand what it is. Mighty Writers also has an on-the-road service that hosts workshops at other locations by request. These workshops have helped students academically according to the organization. 74% of Mighty Writers students achieve grade-level proficiency in writing, while Philadelphia's average is 40%, the group said. The organization was founded in 2009 by Tim Whitaker, using a grant from the Lenfest Foundation. Today, about 60% of Mighty Writers funding comes from various foundations, with the majority of the rest coming from individuals and corporate donations. So, here, a nod to them. Fantastic. Okay, without further ado, you've been very patiently waiting, and we're glad that everybody was able to make it. As a matter of fact, here comes another fella. Have a bottle of water there.
Thank you, my good man.
All righty. And I'll throw in a little bit of talking from some of our board members and so forth, but we're here for poetry. And who will be the first poet to step on the podium? Put a hand up. Oh, Ben, you can be. You're a noted guy. You put the.
We should reserve a slot for the winners of this year's competition.
Oh.
We usually do at the beginning.
Okay. Now, how? Oh, okay. You have the poems?
Yeah, I have the phone.
Excellent. Right after this next, Ben, you want to come up first? Or you want to do it first?
Kick us off.
Kick us off, Ben, and then Robin will come up. Introduce yourself. Nobody knows you.
Good afternoon, Camden.
Ooh, you don't need a microphone.
How's everybody, huh? My name is Ben. I'm I'm on the board, of course, for the Nick Virgilio Haiku Society, and I'm also the board president for the Harleigh Camden Housing Corporation that built the Writers House. Isn't the house beautiful?
Yes.
We've been there. It's a marvel, isn't it?
Yes.
The old pharmacy that was vacant for so many decades has been transformed into this wonderful Writers House. So we're so happy and proud about that in these days where we children and the plight of children is so much in the news these days that's been our mission at the Heart of Camden, to nurture children, provide housing and recreation and learning for children. So that's always been our motto, that the children come first. So we're so proud of that achievement of that being built. I know, of course, you've heard before from me, I knew the Virgilio brothers very, very dearly. Nick and I used to hang out and go to the Reading Terminal in Philadelphia, or sometimes we'd hanging out in the rectory at Sacred Heart washing dishes. And boy, I wonder what Nick would think about today's things in the news these days. His head would be going crazy. There'd be thousands of haikus coming out, I'm sure, from him. And of course, his brother Tony, who was a very, very dear friend of mine, who used to call me on the phone all the time, and he'd say, "Boy, those Phillies or those Eagles," he'd start right in. You get 2 words in, and then he'd be gone. He was on to the next thing. So, as a lot of you do have Mr. Virgilio brothers, and what they meant to me and to all of us here, I'm sure. And we think about them today, especially on Nick's birthday. I just have a few haiku that I've been working on for years, and Nick kind of steered me towards that. It takes decades to get these things right. And we're going to still working, they're still in progress, some of them here. So we're going to start off with one here that maybe you can figure out who this is. A druid's leprechaun, Celtic lion's wisdom, Monsignor Shepherd. One more time. A druid's leprechaun, Celtic lion's wisdom, Monsignor Shepherd. Who could that be? And continuing on with Nick kind of put this plan in my head to keep working on these things. I'm working on a lily still on the pond mirrors his grave. A lily still on the pond mirrors his grave. And let's see. Boyhood dreams, smell of the grass, hitting a curveball. Boyhood dreams, smell of the grass, hitting a curveball. And the last one I'll leave you with is, O Camden, rebirth, rebirth, birthing hope, hope birthing. O Camden, rebirth, rebirth, birthing hope, hope is birthing. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Every year it's our great pleasure to judge with the Haiku Society of America the entrance into the annual Nick Virgilio Haiku Association Poetry Contest. And luckily this year the entries fell to merely 4,000 from the 6,000 they had been the year before, making the judging much more bearable. A special thanks to our judges from around the country who helped us prejudge before we sent them off to Haiku Society of America, who only accept 300 among those to finish the judging. Here are the winners. Crack of dawn, one blackbird lifts the grief. Crack of dawn, one blackbird lifts the grief. This is a 16-year-old girl from Romania who entered. Our contest has gotten international. Second one, sowing sky to see the horizon. Sowing sky to see the horizon. And that's by a student of Tom Painting, who, as many of you know, has for many years always instructed at least one of the winners in our contest, Padilla School, Atlanta. The student is 7th grader. I don't have age on that. And the one that blew me away the very most, Dad, home without the tumor. Dad, home without the tumor. Written by Ben Miller, grade 10, Sage Hill School. And that school is in California, where the teacher is another teacher who has repeatedly instructed winners in our contest, Newport Beach. Henry's going to read the next 3.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So the next one, power outage. My imagination comes to life. Power outage. My imagination comes to life.
Doesn't that say everything about today's teens?
So that was also a student, James Russell, grade 7, Padilla School. in Atlanta, Georgia, and his teacher is Tom Painting. By the great oak tree, I bask in solitude. Thoughts, the only noise. By the great oak tree, I bask in solitude. Thoughts, the only noise. I like that one personally, and that was by Rebecca Ferguson, grade 9, the Covenant Christian School in Palm Bay, Florida, and her teacher, R. Ferguson, presumably.
When we called her to tell her that she was a winner, her mother got the news first and burst into tears. Her husband, the girl's father, had died this year, and she said the girl found solace in poetry, and it was how she got through the year.
And here's a poem that harkens to Basho and Nick, I think, and this is how it goes. The barren branch impales the full moon. The barren branch impales the full moon. And that was by Grace Ma, grade 9, Sage Hill School, Newport Coast, California, and her teacher was Harleigh Parker, also one of the perennial teacher of winners. In fact, last year, between Harleigh Parker and Tom Painting, they had all 6 winners.
Five.
Five? Oh, 5, okay.
It speaks to why, as part of our mission, we are insistent on teaching teachers to teach kids about word choices and the power of language. It seems that even in a completely blinded judging, the same teacher's students' work rises to the top every year, which tells us that with extraordinary teachers, kids do extraordinary things.
I would like to mention one other thing, if anybody's interested to know what those 2 teachers know that they're able to impart with the children. There's a podcast on a site called Haiku Chronicles, and it happens to be number 40. And we were able to arrange to have Harleigh Parker and Tom Painting in the same room in the Santa Fe Hacienda and Spa, where we spent an hour interviewing them and recording their answers and their banter with each other. And I think you'll find it very useful if you have any interest in improving your craft, let's say. Thank you.
That was at High School North America, right? What was it? High School
And
North America?
Robin, and who else was out there? Mary? Mary? Yeah, it was Haiku North America where they did that. And that, Santa Fe, right? Before I bring the next person up, I'm going to do this. Normally, we do our cake cutting at the end, and what I want to do is in the middle of things, 15, 20 minutes from now, I want to cut the cake and pass it out to those who want it, and certainly water and soda, and there's pretzels, again, so we can have it while we're listening to haiku, okay? Everybody? Okay. Good? All right. But you'll have to come in from the outfield. Okay, good. All right, the next person we'd like to call up is Charles Carr. Charles? There it is.
Commercial right away from me.
Oh, give it again.
Okay. For a year and a half, Moonstone has collaborated with Philly Chem to do a program called Philly Loves Poetry. And it's really been a wonderful program. I host it not because it's not wonderful because of me. It's wonderful because of the different people and poets and artists I've been able to solicit to bring on the show. And Robin and Henry and Lamont Stowe were my guests for Philly Loves Haiku, and it was really one of the best shows that we did. And it was really marvelous that they had an opportunity to share the haiku of the winners of last year's contest. And I think people were really blown away. So anyway, when does this show come on? It's the first Tuesday of each month from 6:30 to 7:30. On Comcast, it's channel 66, and on Verizon, it's channel 29 and 30. It's broadcast live on the first Tuesday, and then it's rebroadcast every Tuesday at the same time. Last month, we had Philly Loves Philly Loves Poetry. It's the music of poetry and the poetry of music. We have Elliot Levin, who is a famous Philadelphia musician and poet, and he was just spectacular. So you can go and see that next Tuesday if you're so inclined. So, and I would really, I'm very, very, very moved and impressed when I come here for the first time. This is the first time I've been here. To see what has been done to memorialize, the genius of this man, Nick Virgilio. And part of it I have to owe to my good friend, dear friend Bob Beatty, who's over there, and who introduced me to Robin and Henry, who are friends. So it's how a network is built. So this is a very beautiful thing that you've done here. And I hope to come back every year. So anyway, this isn't a haiku, this is a poem. And it's a poem called Acento for the Crossing Ferry. Acento is a type of poem that merges the poetry of two artists together into one poem and uses one's own skill, to make that merger. And so the two poets that I've merged here, of course, is Walt Whitman, who was grave is in this, not far from us, from his poem called The Crossing Ferry, and a poem by, an award-winning poem by Philadelphia poet Leonard Gartari called The Bridge, Cento for the Crossing Ferry. You must somehow begin from the other shore, and not always be concerned with this shore. I realize I am a ferry on a great river, towing the darkness in the black pudding, mimicking oaks in the sacred heart of leaves. I too am struck from the float forever held in solution. Just as you feel when you look on the river and sky, so I feel. Just as you, I have tended the river and the darkness. It has made me tender toward it. Just as you are refreshed by the gladness of the river and the bright flow, I am refreshed. Just as you, there is in me sadness separated from joy. We ask for forgiveness and are given loneliness. The gods give us our face in the river and we float away from ourselves. Just as you, I found a few inches of light, and I am confetti in the dark river. I watch all night stars being stapled to the sky, hear a river in a river of dreams. Just as you, I watch the river spreading its river wings. I watch the 12th month seagulls, see them high in the air, floating with motionless wings. See how the glistening yellow lit up parts of their bodies and left the rest in strong shadow. What is it between us? Can a bridge be fashioned from there to there? What fuses me into you now and pours my meaning into you? Is it through the light that the soul gets past? Thank you.
Next poet is making his way up now, Walt Howitt. Walt's on our board of directors. And
Give him a little hand there.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, right there. One of the things about Nick's poetry is how much it's affected so many other poets. I know it affected mine very drastically, even before I got involved with the Nick Virgilio Haiku Association. Just reading his work, I began to look at haiku in a very different way than what I had looked at it before. He tends to have a purpose and a depth to his haiku. It's not just, hey, there's a flat piece of scenery there, a two-dimensional painting. He has a three-dimensional thing that you fall into. He often writes haikus where you could take the essence of that haiku and apply, and it may have been about one moment, but you could take the essence of that haiku and apply it to dozens of other moments critical moments in our life, special moments. And I think it's affected my writing because I unconsciously find myself trying to follow the same thing, trying to write in the same direction. I think one of the most startling things that I found, I've run, Tony Virgilio and I, years ago, started a thing called the Wall of Haiku at the Collingswood Poetry Tent in the fall, each fall. And quite frequently, people would come up and they would talk about the guy, they say, oh, haiku, yeah, the guy on the radio. They didn't even remember his name, but they remembered the fact that they heard this guy talking about haiku on the radio. And they found it enjoyable, and they learned it from it. And, you know, they would talk about, you know, the things that they heard in it. And I thought to myself, how many more people did Nick, each time he went on radio, you know, reach out to other people and actually change their thinking about poetry? I find that, a few of the poems, as I say, also have, you know, other meanings. And you know, let me just, I'll give you an example of his poems, Nick's poems, the famous Lily poem. You're talking about something being taken out of its natural environment, the things that made it grow. You take it out of it, and it changes. It's it's out of itself now. And I think I've written several poems in that area. But I'll give you another situation, though. Donut. Bathe in sweet-smelling coffee, unaware of fate. Donut. Bathed in sweet-smelling coffee, unaware of fate. Now, there are thousands of other scenarios like that you could write a haiku about. And, one about personally is, since I have had some disorders and I've used a cane, using a walker, one that, man with cane hears tune, finds it's easier to dance than walk. Man with cane hears tune, finds it's easier to dance than walk. And that too, has a meaning to it that could go into 1,000 other scenarios. I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of things a lot of other better poems than what I'm doing. So I'm going to cut this short, except I'd like to point out that we were talking about kids' poetry. The Collingswood Poetry Tent has, for the past 9 years, had a young poets competition, and it deals mainly with kids younger than Nick Virgilio's national competition. It deals with kids from 7 to 13, and we have a special section in there that is sponsored by the Nick Virgilio Association, and it's strictly for haiku with the same theme. This year the theme of the contest is the story of you, and we wanted kids to write poems about something within themselves, their family, their favorite, their pets, whatever is part of them. And part of that will be a haiku, which will be sponsored by the Nick Virgilio Haiku Association. And I would like everybody here who has a child to perhaps look up on the Collingswood Book Festival site and go to the poetry section and read what the requirements are, and possibly get some of your children and people you know to enter. We've had many kids who entered years ago who are now established writers. They actually have won awards outside of where we are. In fact, there's one kid who just made a movie. He's only 16, and it's a movie that had won a little bit of applause. I leave you with that, and as I say, haiku is a neat thing for every poet to cite.
I wanted Walt to make sure that I knew the Collingswood Book Festival is like a street fair, am I right?
Yes, it is.
They
yeah.
closed down Haddon Avenue. I don't know how many blocks.
Oh, it's about 1.5 miles of blocks.
They closed down Haddon Avenue. Yeah, I'll go all the way through Collingswood then.
Yeah.
Obviously. Okay, and it's been a beautiful thing that's been happening for how many years?
Well, the book festivals, I think in its 16th year. The poetry tent that we've been running is in its 13th or 14th year. And the youth poetry is in its 9th or 10th.
Right. And you've been involved with it?
Yes. It's
How long?
Since the 13th year. Since the poetry tent first started.
Right.
I helped
Great,
start it, yeah.
Yeah, those who haven't been there, didn't want you to think it's a tent that you're going to just go and see one little thing. There's a lot happening and a lot of people, and it's just like one of those wonderful, street fairs where there's tables and there's, vendors and so forth and so on, right?
Yes, it is. It's 6 hours of poetry, and I've been told that it is the biggest one-day poetry event in South Jersey.
Outstanding. Okay, I wanted to make sure everybody knew that because I didn't know it until Walt filled me in. Help you out here. So we have more readers, but once again, we'll be happy to serve you waters, soda, pretzels, and I'm going to cut the cake again, as I said. So those of you, we'll put it on. I should have brought a big tray so we could have done it diner style, but in any case. B.J. Swartz is the next person to come up. That's Walt's buddy. Oh, yeah.
Did I hear a monkey?
That was a cat call. You good? Yeah.
Well, let's put it away.
I know.
Okay, I didn't use my lighter.
Here I am. I'll stand
Oh,
on
wait,
tippy
let me get
toe.
that down.
Oh, okay.
Just got to put it on the side.
Oh,
No, I'm going to turn it.
much easier, much easier.
Can you hear it?
Uh-huh. Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. There we go. Okay, I decided today I'm going to be depressing.
No, not again.
Yeah. With what all's been going on, I figured I should. This one I wrote a few years ago. There was a man named Carr. He was an immigrant, and he was sent to a detention center. And I wrote this for him. Alone in his cell, immigrant lies dying, and Jesus weeps. Alone in his cell, immigrant lies dying, and Jesus weeps. And a couple years ago, during a National Poetry Month, my project was to take a book off the shelf, any random book, open to the page number for that day of the month, pick a word or phrase, and write a haiku about it. So I have two here. One, the phrase was from Uncle John's Bathroom Reader, "The rank smells of filth." Refugee children deprived of sanitation. The rank smells of filth. Refugee children, the deprived of sanitation, the rank smells of filth. And another one was from The Sentinel by Arthur C. Clarke, "Great masses of mankind. Casualties of war, great masses of humankind with no place to go." Casualties of war, great masses of humankind with no place to go. And one last one. In our writers group, one of the prompts was a quote from a song that you remembered. And one of the quote I remembered was, "Silent voices silenced by the thousands." This is, "Beneath the moonlight, weeping for silenced voices, no children singing. Beneath the moonlight,
Weeping for silent voices, no children singing. Thank you.
Okay, now we have another one of our friends from Philadelphia area, and that's Sean Lynch. And Sean, I believe, is going to make a little announcement too, right?
Yes, thank you.
All righty. Well,
Hello, everyone. It's a blessing to be here today, especially with Father and everyone here, so thank you so much. This is hot off the press, my new book, 100 Haiku, published by Moonstone. I also work with Moonstone, just like Charles. Yeah, the launch party's tonight, the Pen and Pencil Club in Philadelphia, 8 o'clock, if you want to join me. I have a few haiku in here that...
What's the address there, Sean?
It's 1520 Latimer Street. It's between 15th and 16th Street, and between Locust and Spruce. So I'm going to read a few haiku that I wrote right here about a year ago while my mom was in the hospital over there at Our Lady of Lourdes. I would come and visit her. I would take the Paco over here, and I would visit her. And she passed away not long after, but let me, here we go. So there's a few haiku that I wrote here about a year ago. As I place my hand onto Nick's gravestone, sap sticks to my fingertips. As I place my hand onto Nick's gravestone, sap sticks to my fingertips. The smallest islands grow unique symbols of life. The water holds us. The smallest islands grow unique symbols of life. The water holds us. I wrote that looking at that little island over there. The last bumblebee buzzes jumping through the grass like nothing happened. The last bumblebee buzzes jumping through the grass like nothing happened. Baby willow trees lean into the lake with roots spread through the unknown. Baby willow trees lean into the lake with roots spread through the unknown. Thank you very much. I have some copies available if you'd like.
Great.
Jim Clare just followed me right up. I told him he was next. Dr. Jim Clare.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here with you. I attended this commemorative meeting 16 years ago. It's been a long time. I'm glad to be back. I'd like to start out with some words of Paramahansa Yogananda, an avatar who came from India to teach us Americans the science of yoga and self-realization. And wait, it's in the front. Here we go. Death teaches us not to place our reliance on the flesh, but on God. Therefore, death is a friend. We should not grieve unduly about the passing of our loved ones. It is selfish to desire that they always remain near us for our pleasure and comfort. Rather rejoice that they have been summoned to advance towards soul freedom in the new and better environment of an astral world. The sorrow of separation causes most men to cry for a while, then they forget. But the wise feel impelled to seek their vanished dear ones in the heart of the eternal. What devotees lose in finite life, they find again in the infinite. And with that, I have my heartfelt wishes for Nick's wonderful passage on his journey. And now a haiku. I should say also that everything that I'm saying today is kind of subtly interrelated. Slave fetches water. Moon sloshing in his bucket. Shackles are broken. Slave fetches water. Moon sloshing in his bucket. Shackles are broken. And I'm going to read a little longer poem called Enigmatic Simultaneities that I wrote just at the end of the grand opening of the Writer's House, Virgilio Writer's House in Camden. And I have an epigram for it. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow said that in A Poem of Life. A man on a bicycle passes by, blinding white, divine light. The sun sets, a bell rings, blinding white, divine light. A neurosurgeon uses a scalpel to remove an airship from the moon, blinding white, divine light. A hand waves, a dog barks, blinding white, divine light. A man burns under fluorescent lights, blinding white, divine light. A breeze stirs, trees sigh, blinding white, divine light. A saint drops a feather into the sea, blinding white, divine light. A poet dies, a maid empties the trash, blinding white, divine light. A boy pulling a typewriter in a wagon sings and gestures with his free hand, blinding white, divine light. A mother grieves for her lost child, blinding white, divine light. Far off a motorcycle roars, blinding white, divine light. A warrior falls in battle. A door opens, blinding white, divine light. A prayer is launched. A bird calls, blinding white, divine light. A miracle is missed. A fire is lit, blinding white, divine light. Haiku, chopping wood. Steel blows on dead limbs, thud and snap in cold blue air, stars detonating. Steel blows on dead limbs, thud and snap in cold blue air, stars detonating. Thank you.
Okay. We're up to someone we know very, very well, former, prior to me, president of the Nick Virgilio Haiku Association, Henry Brand.
Whoa, Henry! Happy birthday, baby! Oh yeah, when was it, Henry?
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
Okay.
How old were you?
My hands still get sticky. I brought an old book here and I'll read one poem from it because it's sort of about here. This is for Nick. Graveside birthday fate. Through the pond and celebrants, radiant ripples. Graveside birthday fate. Through the pond and celebrants, radiant ripples. Actually wrote some just a minute ago. Well, here's one I wanted to read too. About my grandmother who died before I was born. But she planted all these beautiful plants and flowers, and I was raised on a 20-acre farm. Her seckel pears sink into the autumn earth, joining grandmother. Her seckled pears sink into the autumn earth, joining grandmother. There's a political poem. I'm sure we've heard a few of those today, but I couldn't help it. Democracy once, from sea to shining sea. Small child, me too? Democracy once, from sea to shining sea. Small child, me too? Anyhow, and the summer pine over the poet's podium, a mockingbird listens. In the summer pine over the podium, a mockingbird listens. That bird has been over there and over there. And by the way, we have one at the poet's house, and he keeps all the other birds away. And he sings to us from the cross on top of the church. And it's common. I mean, it's not just once, it's every day. Billowing clouds sail by the reading poets. Heart-shaped. Billowing clouds sail by the reading poet. Actually, that's billowing cloud. Sails by the reading poets. Heart-shaped. This is an old book. I have a couple of copies left. It's here. Thank you.
Just want to read one that isn't anywhere except right down there. And it's Little Nick, and you know who Little Nick is, Tony Virgilio. And Tony would be thrilled to see the Phillies doing what they're doing now. Old timers game. No, first one. Whoa. 7th inning stretch. What's the first line? Is it 7th inning stretch? Or is it old timers game? Old timers game. 7th inning stretch. The creaking of knees. Gosh, that was tough getting out, wasn't it? Pat Mulligan, you're next up, friend. Where are you? Patty. He put down Pat. I didn't know who it was at first.
Just one. I know that poem so well.
Sorry about that. I'm not a writer, but this morning in our church, I was I don't know what you would call it, inspired. You can judge that for yourselves. But anyhow, in the sanctuary in the end wall, there are 3 beautiful stained glass windows, and the window is a beautiful Sacred Heart window, and multicolored. And when the sun hits it there, the colors are amazing. It's just interesting. So I was this morning musing, and I came up with A1. I'm not a poetry writer, so please be gentle with me. Anyhow, as you know, the Sacred Heart is very important in our church, certainly in the Catholic Church, in terms of Jesus' heart being pierced by the sword. So here is my take on it. Our Sacred Heart window, pierced by the sun, beaming on us. Our Sacred Heart window, pierced by the sun, beaming on us. That's it.
David Steinberg, are you ready to come up? Come on down. Come on up.
I feel like I'm on top of the mountain here.
You are.
I am. I'm greatly honored to be here, and the rest of you as well. Question, anybody have, other than members of the Society for Poets of Southern New Jersey, who else has heard about our group? Who? Society for Poets of Southern New Jersey. Okay, great. Well, we got a couple. That's good. We've been meeting since 1980. The same day as the U.S. beat the Russians in hockey. Oh yeah, I heard that loud and clear. We remember that, that's for sure. So we meet at the Cadova restaurant which is in Cherry Hill in front on Kings Highway, right in front of Whole Foods. And this Friday is our meeting, the last Friday of the month, not necessarily fourth Friday, the last Friday of the month. And I cordially invite you to join us. It's from 7:30 to 10 o'clock. You don't have to order food if you don't want to. They have a meeting room that is free to the public, and we've been using it for a while, and it seems like a decent place to meet. So I cordially invite you to come and join us. I'm going to be sharing some haiku, not written by myself. I have a friend of mine, a member of the Society for Poets for a long, long time, 25 years or more. She's in a nursing home in Willow Grove, and I visit her once, twice a month or so. And we are in the process of putting out another poetry anthology, and I asked her permission if I could have the honor of reading some of her haiku. Hearing songs for hope, a raindrop wept on my pain, both silent and loud. Hearing songs for hope, a raindrop wept on my pain, both silent and loud. Labyrinth of twigs indicate an intricate home for a bird fighting last flurries. Labyrinth of twigs, intricate home for a bird fighting last flurries. A gay little place, the store with its harpsichords, twinkling with its fans. A gay little place, this store with its harpsichords, twinkling with its fans. The flower invites kaleidoscope senses as spring fever grows. The flower invites kaleidoscope senses as spring fever grows. Suddenly trees roar, pronounced by the light of the dawn, where God vibrated. Suddenly trees roar, pronounced by the light of the dawn, where God vibrated. A palm tree alone, strength for pools to adulate, jailed pageant of peace. Palm tree alone, strength for pools to adulate, jailed pageants of peace. Full moon and rainstorm, ridicule and rhapsody, booming, blaring, love. Full moon and rainstorm, ridicule and rhapsody, booming, blaring, love. Like a sea and a river, gently and fiercely stroking patience at the shores. Like a sea and river, gently and fiercely stroking patience at the shores. Lapse of attention, hills downpour in the carpet, sorting of welfare's swamp. Lapse of attention, hills downpour in the carpet, sorting welfare's swamp. Now I have about 30 other haikus here, but I'm going to save you the trouble of reading it and give someone else a fair opportunity for them to share as well. Thank you very much.
Up, and we have a few more, and then there'll be those who didn't sign the book who will definitely come up as you like. Next, did I say William Fowler?
Thank you. I'd like to read a poem from my book, I Am America. I'm glad to see that Father Michael Doyle is here. The poem that I'm going to read is about the shortest verse in the Bible. It's called Jesus Wept. Jesus wept when Lazarus died, until he came upon his side. When Lazarus rose up from the dead, it was a symbol of those that Christ would wed. Jesus wept, the shortest verse, to overcome Satan's sinful curse. I have written 3 poems about Nick Virgilio. They're haikus. The wordsmith is gone, but his poems live on to inspire more readers. The wordsmith is gone, but his poems live on to inspire more readers. The next haiku is something that I can't take full credit for. I was looking at YouTube and I saw the video of one of these events from several years ago, and someone said something about Nick Virgilio that influenced me profoundly, so I took a little bit of what he said and I added a couple of words of my own, It was Rocky Wilson that said it, and I created this haiku. The short poet cast his long shadow everywhere. The short poet cast his long shadow everywhere. The great man walked along Newton Creek and thought in haiku. The great man walked along Newton Creek and thought in haiku. And finally, God writes long poems from birth to eternity. Poems, you and I. God writes long poems from birth to eternity. Poems, you and I. Thank you.
All right.
Now,
I'm not a writer.
We're even filming it.
Oh.
Beautiful setting, by the way.
I'm not a writer, but what I am is a person who always forgets birthdays, forget when the birthday is happening, forget to send a card, etc. There is a young man here who comes to church with me every Sunday. And I didn't know until this morning that, oh yes, his birthday's tomorrow, and I haven't done anything about it. But some words went through my head as I was sitting here. Quiet presence. Who knows his name? His name is Sal. Quiet presence. Who knows his name? His name is Sal. Happy birthday, Sal.
Okay.
Better than...
Now what? Who's my... Oh, Mike?
And then a call for volunteers.
Oh, we could bring it down to Michael, too. Yeah? Was finally dug and so forth. Know that he was in, was it St. Mary's Cemetery, Michael? What was it?
He was in St. Mary's.
St. Mary's in Belmar, is it?
Belmar.
Yeah,
And that's
in Belmar. And through some divine intervention, and Michael Doyle, he was brought here. And you may know that he was put in an area that may have been where the street is. Tell us, Michael. Tell us where it was.
Well, I'm happy to be here with you. It's where minds are beautiful and creating truth. It's wonderful. And when Nick died in it was 89, the 3rd of January, and he came back to Sacred Heart for his funeral mass, and he was buried in, as George said, in St. Mary's. And I was comfortable with that because he said in a haiku poem that on his father's stone, and I don't know what the next line is, but then he said, and room for my own on the stone. So I took that he was telling us he would be buried with his father. And he was. And sometime later, maybe a month later, Linda, who is here, a great person in Camden for a few years now, and she said to me, Nick should be in Harleigh. And I didn't know what to do with that, so I went to Tony, and I said to Tony, Linda says that Nick should be in Harleigh, which is here. And he agreed. And if he hadn't agreed, then it would never happen. But Tony agreed that Nick should be in Harleigh. And so then there was a wonderful man here running this place
called Bob Smythe, and he was very knowledgeable about Nick, and he agreed right away that he should be here. So I went out thinking I was smart enough to pick a place for Nick's body. And I thought of the poem, it's the greatest poem I think ever written, is Lily Out of the Water. And so thinking of that, I picked a spot right over there near that first car, here on this side, on that area there. Well, God protected me, because after the grave was dug there was a storm that night. And when I came out the following day, the water was filled it up, 3/4 of the grave was filled with water. And little bits of branches that were torn down in the storm were floating on the water in the grave. And I said, where's Nick when we need him? You could write a haiku about that. And so I talked to Bob Smythe, and then we decided that we would go up on higher ground. And we came up here, and they dug the grave here. And the water has not come into it. So thanks to, that's why he's here. It was because of the mistake I made about trying to put him near the water. It was not a good place. So he's up on the hill where we can look up at him and thank God for him. And that, the day that his body was brought here, it was brought earlier in the day from one graveyard to this one, and it was placed in the grave right down here. And that evening there was a celebration. It was the first one for his birthday, so he was laid to rest here on his birthday. And that evening then we had a celebration, something like today. The people read what they had written and so on his birthday, and then we had a little service at the end of it in view of his burial. And I was standing at the top of his grave, and as we were proceeding, and standing in the top of his grave, as we were proceeding, I could feel, this is the truth, coming up through my legs. Does that make any sense? It really doesn't, but that was the feeling I had coming up through my legs. Nick's monument should be a podium. I was never more sure of anything than that Nick's monument should be a podium. And I was sure, and so we went ahead and asked Bob McGovern, God rest him, wonderful artist, and he drew a design for this podium. And he said to me that in the Orient, that a tree is a great image of life, of human life, a tree. And because there's part of it you see, and part of it you do not see, and what you do not see is just as important, that's the roots, just as important as what you do see. So he designed this and you see the bottom part of it is part of the tree going down into the earth. And then there's a block of earth in between, and on top of that, then there's a tree growing up. And all together is a tree representing reality. Part you see, part you don't see, but they're equally important. So the roots of the tree are as important or more than the tree above. So that's Nick's monument. And so people have not complained about it. It speaks to them. And his famous poem is here under my hand. So it's just so great that the way it happened, and that we were able to get this erected here. And Joe Balzano, my dear friend, who died in 2011, he had a big slab of granite down at the port, and he gave me the slab. And then it was cut right here, and cut by a saw, put an inch deep cut on one side and an inch deep cut on the other side. And then the man who was helping me, he drove his pickup truck, put a 4x4 underneath the slab, drove his pickup truck over it, it snapped. So you can look at those steps and you see that they'll prove the truth of what I'm saying. A cut above, a cut below, and it snapped. So that's how it was done. And we are grateful for it, and a beautiful place, and we always can come and recognize and honor Nick Virgilio. Thank you. Well, I wanted to say a little poem. I just wanted to be part of the group that said poems. This is gin.
Holy water.
Well, this is a poem that's focused on a graveyard. We are in a graveyard. And it was a man that lived in my home area, and he was a funny and very intelligent man, and he was the mailman. And he would, like Paddy Mulligan, is he gone? He may be, but he grew up beside me. And we would be coming from school and meet this man, and we'd fall down over our bicycles listening to him. He was so funny. Well, he died in 1972 and buried in the graveyard where my parents are buried, at home. And on his stone, on his grave, they erected a stone, and it was narrow. And there was a storm one night, and the stone fell and broke into pieces. So I thought that that should be remembered. So this is very simple. In the country I come from, they have the Irish language and the English language. And the Irish word is a word called crack. Somebody would say to you, "We had great crack last night." And they're saying that means we had great fun. The word C-R-A-I-C means fun. in the Irish language. So anyway, this man, O'Reilly was his name, and O'Reilly's around where I grew up, you had to have a nickname for every family, or you couldn't tell who was what and who was who. So this family's nickname was Stevie, and so this man was called Stevie. This poem is called Stevie's Stone. Stevie's stone broke and fell on his grave, not by a stroke or foul wind, harsh as Maeve, but by the joke that he each day from his lively clay decides to tell his buried friends, and his stone cracked and split its sides. Then bones rattled in dry rot wood, and skulls laughed as best they could. All underground they were minor quakes, with more fun than their own wakes. They all laughed at the joke and a half that Stevie made, with words that strayed from local clods of every grade. I looked at the stone as soon as I came, and there was his name intact on a piece. Around the bits in laughter were laid Eugene O'Reilly and the crack that he made. Then I knew that humor was a name for God, the only touch that gets under the sod, because the constant laughter in Stevie's eyes said, if clay can smile, the dead will rise.
Good afternoon. I have three more from my anthology of hijinks, graveyard lectern hijinks. I have three more selections. I like to read them. I need props for this. We were talking pine sap, and George was cleaning it off, and how sticky it was, and someone read a great pine sap poem. If you get it on your skin, or if you get it on your clothes, it's really tough. So Linda says olive oil. So I wrote this, and it's an appreciation of Robert Frost. Two roads diverge atop a graveyard lectern. A beetle entrapped in pine sap regrets taking the one less traveled. Two roads diverge atop a graveyard lectern. A beetle entrapped in pine sap regrets taking the one less traveled. This next one was inspired from when I was a little kid, and like when we all were, and went to the movie theater to see scary movies. And we'd sit low in a chair, one eye, fingers over one eye, but totally intrigued, and you couldn't turn away. And this was one of the most scariest movies I had ever seen, and it has always stuck with me. So I'm bringing it here with a nod to Vincent Price. Way back. Although it was in color. Snared neath a graveyard lectern, a fly anthropomorphic, a spider nears. Help me! Help me! If you saw the movie, you would know it. Sneered neath the graveyard lectern, a fly, anthropomorphic, a spider nears. Help me! Help me! One more. I remember during the Nick Virgilio, I don't know if he's here, but when we dedicated the Nick Virgilio house, someone read I thought it was a great haiku, and it was just about a bothersome fly. I'll read his, but it was buzz, buzz. Well, we don't get the same turnout here.
Alan Pizzarelli, yep.
Reading haiku from a graveyard lectern, a pesky gnat, a bookmarker. Reading haiku from a graveyard lectern, a pesky gnat, a bookmarker. Thank you.
I'm Bonnie Squires. I don't even remember how I first met Nick because we knew each other for so many decades. But at the time, I was a special assistant to the president of Temple University. And Nick knew that I had to get up at 6:30 every morning to be in Leo Corus's office by 7:30. So at 6:30, my phone would ring, and this voice would say, "How do you like this one, Bonnie?" And he'd read me one of his haiku poems. Anyway, I want to read one of Nick's poems because we're here for Nick today. Telegram in hand, the shadow of the Marine darkens our screen door. Telegram in hand, the shadow of the Marine darkens our screen door. I'll tell you one of mine that Cor Vanden Heuvel published in his double-day anthology of haiku. I had sent him so many haiku, and he didn't like any of them, Cor Vanden Heuvel. And then I wrote one that I thought, he'll never print this one. That's the one he printed. Dead cat, frozen to winter earth, prying him off. It really happened. Dead cat, frozen to winter earth, prying him off. And then I wrote one sitting here today. A leftover flag waves as we recall our friend Nick and his haiku. A leftover flag waves as we recall our friend Nick and his haiku.
All right, Bonnie. Making a movie of me? Yep. Give me $1. No?
No heckling. No heckling from the podium.
Father Doyle, I always hoped that... I always hoped that some of the draft records you destroyed were my draft records. Thank you. All right, ready, George?
Yeah.
Saturday breakfast at the Elgin. Who sits next to me? Judge Davis. Last time I was here, I read other people's haiku, and a lady said to me, "What are you, scared?" And I thought, well, Busan is a better haiku writer than me. Okay, this is a double haiku. Oh, I refuse to read anything more than once. This is a double haiku, 34 syllables. The rollers hitting the bulkhead under the dock. The sound echoed in the metal trash can bolted to the cement. Who hears this? Statue of Gandhi trucking along. Somebody put a wreath of real flowers on his head. I write haiku because of Nick Virgilio. I wrote my first poem because of Rocky Rainbow. And I write poetry now because of Sean Lynch. Give me a second. I got like, some people read off their phones. I got pieces of paper.
Bravo.
Music of the sleet on the bamboo leaves, modulated by the wind. That's one of my favorites.
All right. We missed it. You didn't do it a second time.
Well, you got to pay attention the first time. I saw a huge sea lion on the dock scratching himself like a dog. Ooh. Oh, I wrote these on the other side of the river and the other side of 130. So it's two Cooper River haiku. This is the summer one. Turtle rode a log up the river on the tide. Jumped in at the dam. This is the winter one. Can't describe the sound the ice made when the tide went out from under it. There you go. Give me a sec. Bear with me. Let's see that. Okay. Oh, this one. This is the last one, and then I'll leave you alone. Toy dump truck on mulch pile. Spring blooms. Raindrops splashing puddles across street. That's all.
I've been blessed my whole life to be in the world of salvage, recycling, and I have a shop over in Kensington, North American Street. Now somebody comes by, like they did this morning, and said, "How did you get into this?" And I said, "Tip my hat to Father Doyle, it was a calling." But on that note, I don't know if anybody knows about it, but the Mario Lanza birthplace is being torn down right now in South Philadelphia. Oh! Yes, yes. Very, it just blows me away to let this stuff happen. But this morning, somebody came to the store with a transom window from Mario Lanza's house. If you Wikipedia Mario Lanza, it goes all through about his life, but then the early life, there's a photograph of the house with that transom window. And right now, we have that transom window. And I was inspired, if I can say that, haiku here. Excuse me. Bricks and mortar vanish. The voice bellows through the transom. Bricks and mortar vanish. The voice bellows through the transom. Thank you.
Our world is starting to change a bit, but I have a poem here I want to read that I wrote about something that happened to me 42 years ago, and I'm actually proud to have had my first piece in a juried published poetry journal. Alexis Rotella did a book called Me Too, Stories Collected from Women in the Workplace, and this is mine 42 years ago. First big job, in my office on a call, who's unzipping my dress? The boss's boss behind me. Instinctive slap. Handprint rose on his face. I'm fired, and all in a minute. Sheer blouse, discreet bodice, pale green and tan, never worn again. No job, no rights, a secret wrapped in a whiff of shame. Me too. And just because I can't leave us on a tough note, the fall breeze, falling apple sauce.
Hi, guys. My friend made a rubbing of the this grave. Joe Plageman, who's not here, but he loved Nick and Walt Whitman too. Frank inspired me to tell this joke. And if I told you this already, don't give it away. What did the fish say when he swam into the brick wall? You already know, I told you. Damn. I wrote that joke. The speed line stops near Nick's grave. He has a freedom pass. On top of the blue can, full of recyclables, an old ballet slipper. On top of the blue can, full of recyclables, an old ballet slipper. Beach walk, adding a toothpick to the driftwood. A new writer's house. The old pharmacy now dispenses poems. In the old pharmacy, all prescriptions call for haiku twice a day, with or without meals. In the poet's hood, his name at last in lights, beckoning us home. In the poet's hood, his name at last in lights, beckoning us home. At the museum, the shiny elevator door abstracts me. At the museum, the shiny elevator door abstracts me. With my thumb, rubbing the place where the wedding ring should be. Reaching into the dark closet where we keep her urn. The numbers on my watch light up. And one good thing about winter, all the dog poop is frozen. Oh, I forgot, Tony. The Phillies are one game away from sweeping the Nationals. Tonight, national TV, 8 o'clock. Go! And another poet that loved baseball was Mr. Walt Whitman. And for this occasion, he's written something special for Nick. Too many papers. Spoil the soup. All right, here we go. I always thought of Walt Whitman's poetry as a huge bouquet, and Nick's as a single petal falling from that bouquet.
I sing Nick Virgilio and celebrate Nick Virgilio. And what Nick assumes, I shall assume, for every atom belonging to Nick as well belongs to me. I loaf by the pond, observing a summer water lily. Nick's tongue, every atom of his being, formed from this water, this mud, this sun, this air. Born here of parents Rose and Anthony, and their parents the same, and their parents the same, and poetic parents all the way back to Esau and Basho. We now, all made better by Nick, who like the lily came out of himself, we begin or carry on our own haiku journey, hoping to cease not until death. Strict, seasonal, 17-syllable, 5-7-5 creeds and schools in abeyance, retiring back a while, sufficed at what they are, but not forgotten. Yes, Nick harbored for good. The sermon, Easter morning, the sermon is taking the shape of her neighbor's hat. Or Nick harbored for bad, barking its breath into the rat hole, bitter cold. Yes, Nick permits to speak at every hazard, nature unchecked, a distant balloon drifting over the county fair, eclipses the moon. And Nick permits to speak at every hazard, the gritty inner city unchecked, between tricks, knitting booties. Yes, Nick permitted his world to speak with all its original energy. And lucky for us, we all are here to receive it. The spotted hawk swoops by, complains of my gab and my loitering. I too am not a bit tame. I too am untranslatable. For Nick, I sound our barbaric yap over the rooftops of the world. But I bequeath myself to the lilies and the grass. If you want me again, look for me under your boot soles. You'll not know who I am or what I am. But I shall be good health to you nonetheless, and fill and fiber your blood. Failing to fetch me at first, keep encouraged. Missing me one place, search another. For I stop somewhere, waiting for you, and you, and you, and you, and you.
Back to your mausoleum.
See you walk.
He needs a ride, Uber back to his mausoleum.
I wanted to play in honor of Nick because a year ago I played this in honor of a visit to the grave of Walt Whitman with some other poets where we recited poems. And it's a famous hymn, Amazing Grace. Just a little introduction. A lot of people don't know some of the history of Amazing Grace. But I was in a place in Ireland called Amazing Grace Country. It's in Donegal County, in a place called Buncrana. The man who wrote Amazing Grace was somebody who was really converted. His slave ship sunk in, I'm thinking I'm saying the Slay Lily, which is off the coast of Buncrana. And so I'm playing this on the Native American flute. For the Native Americans, Amazing Grace is the hymn, and it's played frequently.
Rock
Mickey, if I can borrow your monkey to keep this, I appreciate it. Okay. So this is for Nick. Amazing Grace.
That's right.
Okay, we have some leftovers up here. There's a monkey who wants to recite but has no voice.
You try it.
Okay, I can do it. I think I can do it. He's a visitor. Hello, Bongo. Okay. Oh, wait. I have to listen to him first. I could mimic, but I'm not good at, or original. All right, I'll just stay right here. We have reached the end of our poetry. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Thank you for participating. Please tell your friends. Keep those cards and letters coming. And donations wouldn't be bad either. Thank you all, really. We appreciate it. It's a great time. It's a wonderful day. And anyone who didn't get cake or would like to take it home, then maybe someone who's not here, we're going to cut it up and you just put a piece on, put up one of the covers on top, one of the dishes on top, and take it home. Okay? Thank you very much. God bless. Take care.
Good job, George.
So long, everybody. I'll see you later.